Right,
Good
we've
to
hit,
go?
we've hit record.
We've hit record.
Okie doke.
Okay, so do you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are?
Okie doke. I'm Suzie. I've been a farmer's wife now for 55 years. I began life as a fashion buyer and ended up as a farmer's wife. And I've been a farmer ever since. It's been a really rewarding life being a farmer's wife, but it's also quite tough because there's never enough money.
Yeah.
And so when my children left home, I probably had my children quite early. So when my children left home, I decided I wanted to do something a bit different. And that's when I did my counselling course. Mm-hmm. And from that, I started working with the Farming Community Network. And I've been doing that ever since. And that's just working with farmers. And just listening. It's so simple what I do. Just listen.
So did you go out and did you think, oh, I want to go and get a job because money's tight, or did you just think I'm going to do this now? Because it's not a job, is it? You didn't get paid to do it.
I didn't get paid at all. As life went on, when there was more money in the charity, at that time, I was paid £10 an hour for 10 or 20 hours a week. So it wasn't a huge amount.
Yeah, you're not going to be living the life of luxury on that.
Going to Bali.
Yeah,
not going to Bali. But actually, it was just something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I had different jobs, but actually being a volunteer is far more interesting.
It's very rewarding, isn't it?
It is really rewarding, and it enriches your life tremendously, because through the Farming Community Network, I've been speaking to lots of different farmers, some very positive, some very negative, some very upbeat, some suicidal, and that's given me a really good insight into other people's lives, which is interesting. But also, on the other side, I've actually met people that I would never meet before because of my position in FCN. I've spoken to Prince Charles, King Charles, he should be now, and Princess Anne, and the Lord Lieutenant of Somerset. All these different people that I would never have met in other ways.
And I suppose the point about being part of the FCN and that community around farmers, and the fact that actually they can sometimes be hidden people, can't they? And very often people don't take that into consideration. Can be a very lonely position when you're out there as a farmer.
So it's very lonely, and also retired farmers find it really difficult, especially if they have no family. Yeah. I'm talking to a guy at the moment who I've talked to for many years. He never married. He had a girlfriend, a lovely Dutch girlfriend, and many friends, and now he's living in quite an isolated place on his own. And he had a stroke. And he's found it very, very hard to cope with that. Now he's got his driving licence back, he can go out and do some stuff. But it is very isolating.
I think, that we trail hunt, and we know the importance of that for people that come along and actually be part of a community.
Very much so.
We were at the Dunster show yesterday, and we popped down there and we thought, wow, if the trail hunting ends because of what's been happening and how difficult it's been, those farmers don't have anywhere to go on a Wednesday and a Saturday. And it is a lifeline for some people, isn't it? I mean, it is, you see people that arrive at, say, 11 o'clock, and if you go back to where the meet was, they're still there at 12 and 1 o'clock, still chatting, having a social, having a cup of tea, having a glass of whatever, or a sandwich or whatever. And I think one of the things that's really hard is people who in the wider community don't necessarily see that, do they?
No, And actually, it's more important on Exmoor than here.
Yeah.
Because farmers are more
Yeah,
isolated.
definitely.
And I've got friends that go out, like you say, they go to the meet, then they stay and chat.
Yeah.
Not particularly interested in the trail hunting, but they're like-minded people.
Yeah.
They love the countryside.
Yeah.
They love being in the open air. They
Yeah.
love people that respect the animals.
Yeah. And I mean, yesterday it was so obvious. It was lovely to see lots of people together, and it's of all ages, you know,
Yes.
from toddlers up to
Yeah.
really, really old people,
Yes.
older than me.
Older than me.
No comment.
No.
But how's that impacted on your mental health if you're carrying that kind of?
I've always had support from Charlie, my husband,
Yeah.
and my family, and the actual charity is quite supportive.
Yeah.
But I think it's been a way of working out for me who I am and what I do.
Yeah.
And so that's been interesting. I'd never had any counselling or supervision until I worked with crews, and then I realised, that it's quite good to talk about yourself sometimes. And because my mum had mental health problems, we were always told to be quiet, don't talk about it, keep it private. And so you keep it inside. But when I learned that actually I can talk about it, and that's what I think is really important with people now. You know, just talking, and that's what we do with the farmers. Just listen to them.
But there is that side of it, though, isn't it? It's about, you say about talking and not talking and being quiet about people's mental health. There's still, even today, there's such a stigma, and more so with men than with women.
Very much.
It's become socially accepted that women have mental health problems,
Yes.
less so with men,
Yeah.
and we all know the outcomes of that.
And farmers are particularly proud.
Oh yeah.
And
I think men tend to be proud,
Yes.
don't they?
And I think farming is a way of life which many people don't understand. It's not very sociable. Your home is your office. You can't get away. And so men don't naturally want to talk about themselves.
Well, it's 24 hours, isn't it? It's
Yes.
not, oh, I'm going to take a day. It's very rare that you get a day off or a
Yes.
couple of weeks off in Spain for a little
Yes,
holiday. Do you know what I mean?
right.
Because actually you've got responsibilities of the
Yeah.
animals. And
Yeah.
I've got animals myself, and I've got horses. So they are a huge responsibility. When
They
you
are.
take on a horse, you think, I've got this horse for 30 years.
Yes.
Minimum. I've got to think about that as that responsibility. I think that just makes a huge difference to how you go away, whether you go away,
Yeah.
who you can leave them with. A farmer can't leave 150 cows with the neighbour.
No.
No.
It doesn't kind of
That's
work like
true.
that, does it?
I will say that probably people don't think about this when they buy dogs.
Yeah.
And I think all the people that have bought dogs over COVID time, they're struggling with them. And usually on a farm, if you can afford it, you can get somebody in to look after your cows.
Yeah.
But not necessarily your dog.
Yeah.
So what area do you cover?
I've always just covered Somerset.
Okay, yeah.
And
But that's a huge area.
Yeah, it is huge.
and it was in the beginning, because in the beginning there was only two of us.
Okay.
There was me and another guy from Minehead. And actually, I was in the organisation for a few months, and we had a green card come down saying who was in your group. And it put me down as Suzie Wilkinson coordinator. Nobody had asked me if I'd like to be coordinator, but there was just the two of us then. But now we've got over 40 volunteers.
Oh, wow.
And covering quite a few in West Somerset now and Frome area. And they've all got farming experience, but many of them have got different skills. And the whole thing, I think, is about lived experience, isn't it? That they have lived through bereavement and loss. They have possibly lost their farm. They've had financial problems. There's a lot of relationship problems on a farm because it's all so.
Yeah, it's all very kind
It's
of
all
close.
insular,
yes,
isn't it?
and you've
Yeah.
got dad, then you've got grandpa, and then you've got the son, all working together. And I realised that a couple of years ago. I talked to a very distressed lad on the phone about the dairy farm, but he couldn't make the only decision because he had to talk to his father and his son about what they were going to do in the future. I think the rest of the family realised that there was a problem when he actually had to go into hospital.
Yeah, of course.
And after that, they decided maybe the best thing is to get rid of the dairy herd, and which they did.
Big change, yeah.
And I've talked to him last week, and he says he's really happy.
Yeah.
They've all got rid of these awful responsibilities. He's diversifying. He's actually working on the farm, building up some nice barns. He's rented some of his grass keep, but he's also working at Longleat.
Oh, right.
He's fencing at Longleat, so he's meeting other people.
Yeah.
A complete change of kind of life, but by the sounds of it, so much happier for it.
And much happier. And as farmers, we all think we've got to plod on, and we've got to keep our cows, and we've got to, do this, that, and the other. So, yeah.
I do wonder, like that. It's a really good example of change, isn't it? And a really good example of people taking, breaking those patterns. But I do wonder, there's a big pressure, isn't there, from the government? If you do this and this and this, then you'll get this, this and this.
Yeah.
And in a sense, it locks people in. And so therefore they feel insecure if they make any changes. Yes. And as a result of that, they end up in that cycle that you've talked about.
They're in the cycle. And that brings in the other problem that farmers worry about is the rules and regulations.
Yeah.
And, having to apply for subsidies.
Yeah.
And what should they be doing? Should they be rewilding or should they be growing food?
Yeah.
So it's not an easy time.
No, and I know that in certain parts of our country as such, they grow certain crops for fuel as well.
Yeah.
And it's like very often people don't realise that farmers are doing that. They don't see that they're not just creating the food on our table, but they're also providing us with heat and energy within the country. Yeah. But it can be quite frowned upon as well, because some traditional farmers see that as a negative. And I just think, well, do you know what? It doesn't matter as long as you're earning money and you're treating the land with the respect that it deserves.
Yeah. I do worry about the future because we do need food.
Yeah,
we do need food, and the land for food is going. It's great planting trees, rewilding. That's all great, but I just worry about where our food's coming from.
Well, I did I'm really careful around food and stuff like that. We're a bit of a foodie family, but I did an exercise. So I went to the supermarket and I decided I'm not going to buy anything that isn't British, that isn't part of the UK. Yeah. And I thought, okay, well, forget it. You get a basket with this few little bits in the bottom because first of all, I buy my meat locally because I know that he butchers it locally. So I know that, but it's like the fruit, you can't, unless you buy seasonal fruit and veg. But even the seasonal fruit and veg comes from some odd country that's done gosh knows how many air miles. And I think, well, you can go to somebody on the side of the road that's selling exactly the same and it's literally gone from the field to the gates.
Yeah. And it tastes so much better.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
For a time, there was the Women's Farming Union, which I was a member of, and I'm not sure if it's still going now or not. But we used to do that sort of thing. We used to go into supermarkets and see what was coming from other countries. Yeah. And I bought French beans a couple of months ago, And then there was a program on television about these little beans that come from somewhere in Africa.
Yeah.
And I mean, looks amazing. It's giving those chaps in Africa a work, but then they're frozen. They're taken to the airport. And there's all the air miles, and then they come to a distribution plant over here, and then they come down to the supermarkets. It's such a long journey, isn't it?
And I have that thing that you did just then, which is, and I don't know if you ever think this, Mike, but I think, oh, but they're getting work and they need the money.
Yeah.
And then I think, I'd rather just send them a couple of quid in the post.
Yes, I agree with
because
that.
I'm sure that's all they're getting. I'm sure they're not getting. I mean, you were out in India this year, weren't you?
Well, it was just mind blowing, really, how different culture was.
Yeah.
Food was phenomenal, but just a very different way of life, and it's market stalls everywhere, and you can go and buy whatever you want, from these market stalls. And I think one of the things that really threw me was that you would go down this street, and every single stall on that street was selling the same thing. Yes. And you sort of think, well, they all look the same. Who do you choose to buy your onions from?
Yeah.
Which stall? And it just made me wonder how that works. And it's such a different way of how we operate. Okay, we don't have markets like that, as much anymore. It might be the weekly farmers market or whatever. But we almost have that with supermarkets now, where you have supermarkets. You might have 4 or 5 supermarkets within a half-mile radius of each other, and you decide which one you go to. But it is interesting what you were saying around where food comes from, and I wonder what your thoughts are around, why are we having to import so much food? Is it because farmers are diversifying and being told to do that, or is it just greed and demand? Is it just that we need more?
We need more, and it's cheaper sometimes to import it, isn't it? Yeah. That's the problem. And I think many farmers at the moment are quite anxious about the agreement with Australia.
Okay.
Because the trade agreement that I think it was Liz Truss worked out.
Yeah.
And so a lot of good steaks and things are coming in from Australia, and that's going to dramatically push the price of beef down.
Oh, really? Okay, that's going to be really interesting then.
We've been told it's a good trade deal. But
it might not be for British farming.
It might not be for British farmers.
Yeah.
I think so, we were just before we started doing the podcast, we were going through your books, weren't we? We were just looking at like business and the value of business and what it costs and et cetera, and just breaking it down to units, et cetera. So, and farmers must do that per cow. So, but also what you've got to take into consideration, and actually for us as well, because I was talking to Dave this morning, we've got a couple of tenants that are not paying their rent.
Yes.
And that's a substantial amount of money. They haven't done it for 3 months.
Yeah.
That we've got to provide council tax, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. We've still got all of those responsibilities, and yet these people won't pay their rent. And there's nothing we can do about that. The government gives us no support as landlords about that at all. And it's just an absolute, and it could be another year before we actually get them out if push comes to shove. And it's the same as a farmer buys 10 cows, 3 of them might die through no fault of his.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We're making a loss on these properties through no fault of ours. We've done nothing wrong. They've still got a roof over their head. It's still clean. It's still tidy. It's still da-da-da-da. And it's exactly the same as a farmer with a cow.
Yeah.
He's only then got 7 cows. Well, he's already spent £1,000 on those. And it's that people don't consider that really when you're buying a piece of meat, or some people don't. I think
they don't realise. And also, if you're organic, and you don't want to use too many, you have to get permission to use certain antibiotics. You can't use pesticides and things. It's very expensive. Yeah. And then people look at organic meat and say, my goodness me, that's a lot of money.
There's a program on Netflix, and I think it's called Our Little Farm, and it's based in America. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's definitely. Have you got Netflix? No. It's worth a watch if you can get it and go to your
Yeah.
sons or whatever and watch it. It's
Yes.
really worth it because they talk about bringing everything back to how it used to be. So you plough and you lay
Yes.
certain things. But I think they got investors to help them do that.
Yes.
But that farm that they started up had failed for like 20, 30 years. So you think it takes a lot of courage. And then they had fires, which fortunately they got away with. But, you know, it's like we have storms. I mean, I've seen locally people might plant maize. Well, they get like 5 shoots up because the rain's washed it all
Yeah.
away. And
Yeah.
that's it.
expensive.
It's an
Yeah.
expensive thing
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah. And actually, there are many risks when you're farming, isn't? You know, there's many risks. There's disease. There's flooding on the levels that we've had. BSE, foot and mouth. All these things contribute.
There's just so much, isn't there?
TB is one of the awful things for the farmers.
TB is really stressful. It's really stressful because even if we've had one inconclusive result. We've just passed, but we've had one inconclusive result, 2 inconclusive results in the past. But because we're more or less a closed herd, luckily we haven't had TB. But the stress of the test is
It's just that
horrible.
unknown, isn't it? I suppose.
Well, for part of it is because we've got cows and babies.
Yeah.
The mums don't like being separated from the babies, and because they've got to go through the crush, and they find it really hard. And then you're waiting for the results. You get the results 4 days later, and it's such a stressful time. And local farmers around here, a lot of them have had to buy extra fields, put extra sheds up, just to keep the animals that they can't sell.
So if some of your cows have been tested positive, does that mean the ones that are negative you can sell, the positive ones you can't sell?
When you have your test,
Yeah.
if you've got a positive result on some of the cows, and depending on how many it is, with a positive test, those cows will go immediately, whether they've got a calf or not.
They just get killed?
They just get killed, and they go to the abattoir. Then that farm has to retest before it can sell anything. So basically, if you keep on having a positive result, you can't sell anything for months and months.
So does the farmer get compensated for this?
You do get compensated, but it's not
pennies.
enough.
Yeah.
It sometimes it's a good compensation, but it's not enough for.
It's not comparable
It's
to.
not comparable.
And also, there's no succession either. Then is there? Because you've lost that breeding cow.
You've lost, and then you lose. I don't think you lose some incentive.
Yeah.
I think is it ever going to?
Yeah.
And then you've got, one of the local farmers around here has got 1,000 animals, and he has to retest and retest. And then when you've had a negative test for the whole herd, you have to have another negative test. So it doesn't.
And who pays for the test?
We don't pay for the test. But if we want to sell animals at market, we have to pay for them to have a TB test before they go.
Okay, now I'm going to ask a question because this is pure ignorance. If a cow has TB, would that be transferred to a human? Could it be transferred to a human?
I think they talk about it being transferred.
But is there any tests of that?
I haven't ever heard of anything.
It's a bit. We were talking about it in one of our podcasts before about antidepressants, because they talk about antidepressants doing their job.
Yes.
If you see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, if you read really deeply into all of this, there is no scientific evidence to say that it actually makes a difference.
Really?
Yes.
Gosh.
It's hearsay.
Right.
So I wonder if there's any scientific evidence to say that if that cow's got TB, that they're going to give it to me and you if we eat him.
Yeah.
Or her. or whatever.
I'm going to find that out.
Right, let me know, please.
Yeah, let us know.
I'm
Come
really
back and tell
interested in that.
us.
Though I
Yeah.
just think
Yeah, it's
sometimes
interesting.
it's a bit like with the badgers, isn't it? They say badgers bring TB onto the farm.
Yeah.
Now, they have done scientific evidence. They've done a lot of research
Yeah.
on that, and there is scientific evidence to say that it does.
Yeah.
But once again, is that detrimental to us human beings or not?
That's really interesting. I will look into that.
But as a farmer, because effectively, I know you're a farmer's wife, but you're still a farmer. You still go down there and feed
Yeah.
that bull and
Yeah.
do the cows. And in that sense, I suppose, isn't that something why people should tell you that this is the reason why we have to do this? And this is what, it was a bit like foot and mouth. I remember the day we got foot and mouth. And it was really sad. We come back from, I don't know where we'd been. We'd been away for a couple of days, and we were looking at buying a horse. But we weren't going to buy this horse until it had run at the races. And it was running at the races the next day, and they were walking the course. And that's when we got the call to say, foot and mouth, everything's closed down. And we got the horse because you could move horses then.
Yes.
You couldn't move anything
Yeah.
else. And sadly, he never ran again. But he obviously was a pet at home. But the impact that had on all of us in the farming community. I mean, we are all part of that community, and it was almost like somebody had put a veil over the whole of the community, and we were all kind of conscious of everywhere we went, who we spoke to, which farms we went on to, whose farms we didn't go on to. It was in fact, I think that was worse than COVID, in my opinion.
It was a really hard time. And at that time, I was talking to people up in Durham, Yorkshire, Cumbria. And they were telling me the most dreadful, dreadful, dreadful tales. They'd drive across the moor, and there'd be all this smoke.
The black smoke, yeah.
And they lost all their animals. There was one positive guy, a friend of mine who works with FCN. He'd been milking for years, and he and his brother lost all their cows. And they thought, right, what are we going to do? And actually they moved to rearing sheep instead. Mm-hmm. And he said, it's a wonderful decision. It was a wonderful decision. So,
Yeah.
And sometimes there's these coincidences that, something happens in life. I was talking yesterday, I went to see my lovely friend who has just found she's got dementia. And we were talking about the way we met. And I was looking after my granddaughter up in Bristol, and she was looking after her grandson. We just met in the park and started talking while the children were playing. And from there, we've been friends ever since. And that was complete coincidence.
Yeah.
And sometimes these things happen.
They do, though, don't they? I think coincidences happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you and I, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did you meet?
Well, in fact, Mike met Will, my youngest, before he met me. And I was looking for somebody to do a paperless system for the business.
Yes.
I was sick to death of scrambling through people's notes that I couldn't read. And I'd recently been to an inquest, and it was really unpleasant being in the witness stand and not being able to read somebody's writing. And I just didn't want to repeat that again. I thought, I just don't want to do that again. It was awful. And Mike had been doing some work somewhere else, and Will met up with him. We checked out some other people, and we weren't overly keen on them.
Yes.
Yes. There's got to be personality. You've got to be able to work with somebody. You can't just have somebody that's
important.
And so Will went and met you, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then we met, and we've been friends ever since, really, haven't we?
Exactly.
And I support Mike in his business, and he irritates the hell out of me. Or no, I don't mean that at all. He's brilliant. I love him to bits. He's part of the family. It is, he's a great support to us, and as well as to business, really. And now he's a trustee of the charity. So
brilliant.
Bless him.
Yeah, my sins.
Is that the right story?
I think that is the right
I didn't
story.
miss
Yeah, that was a
anything
very
out.
good, succinct way of saying it. Yeah,
And
thank
why
you.
did you decide to be a trustee of the charity?
So I've always done something charitable, I
Yeah.
think, since I was sort of quite young.
Yes.
Um, and I've done bits and pieces really. So I did quite a lot of volunteering with Citizens Advice Bureau,
Yes.
both locally and nationally.
Yeah.
Did quite a bit with the Scout Association as well, and then kind of career kind of took off a little bit, so those things kind of faded in the background whilst I was working out what I was doing work wise. And Angie invited me to a cream tea here to raise money for the charity. And as I was attempting to leave, she caught me and said, "So when are you going to become a trustee of my charity?" And there was no option to say no. It was a yes. And yeah, nearly 5 years later, here we are.
Right.
So, and I really enjoy being part of the charity. And
Yeah.
I do some other volunteering work elsewhere as well. But it's I think it's very rewarding, and I think anyone anyone listening, anyone out there, I think everyone should do something to help their community.
Yes.
Whether that's having a conversation with a neighbour that's
Yeah.
going through a difficult time,
Yeah.
or whether it's going to a local coffee morning
Yeah.
and helping wash up, or
Yeah.
or delivering leaflets, or whatever it might be. I think everybody should do something that works for them. So yeah, I really enjoy it, and I'm a bit obsessed with governance. So I think that's probably why Angie likes me being a trustee, because I like to make sure we dot the i's and cross the t's and
You've
things
got it
like
right.
that. But yeah, it's good fun. It's good fun.
It's something to be proud of as
It
well,
is,
though, isn't
yeah.
it? Because I mean, the charity sees 140 at the moment. Is it 142 people
Yeah.
It's something like that. And when I
a
joined,
week?
a
Yeah.
week, yeah. And when I joined, the charity was seeing about 65.
Yes.
So it's grown massively. And it always makes me laugh because Angie and Rob, one of our other trustees, always say, "Oh, we don't want the charity to grow anymore." And they've been saying it for 5 years. And I keep reminding them that you're seeing more than double the clients that
Yes.
you saw 5 years
Yeah.
ago. And we should be really proud. And we were
Yes.
really fortunate to be presented with the Prince of Wales Award.
Yeah. Yes, I saw that. That was
Yeah, which is
great.
fantastic, and
Yeah.
yeah, incredibly proud of that. And we were when they so Rob and I went to the Bath and West show where they presented this award, and we met the other
I
charity that we
think
were
I
up
saw a
against.
photograph of it
Yeah,
somewhere.
you
You
probably
probably
would have
did.
done.
It was in the
Yeah,
Mendip Times, probably
Yes.
it was.
alongside your MBE.
Yes.
Yeah, it probably was. Yeah.
Not quite as good as yours.
Oh, no. But we met the other charity, and we were chatting to them. And we were thinking, oh gosh, yeah, that's an amazing charity. They're fantastic. And we thought we've got no chance. And the chap that was presenting the award started sort of reading out about the charity that had won, and I sort of turned to Rob. I'm getting goosebumps talking about
Yeah, because
it.
it's exciting, isn't it?
It is, and I turned to Rob when they were talking about the charity that had
Yeah.
won, and I said, "Rob, we've won." And he goes, "No." And the guy that was presenting it then said, "And we're presenting this to Somewhere House Somerset," and
Brilliant.
we were just over the moon. We both sort of shed a tear really, because we're
Yes.
so proud of what we've been able to do
Yeah.
for the community. Now,
Yeah.
neither Rob or I are counsellors. We don't actually see clients face to face, but I think the difference the counsellors make to people's lives
Yes.
is just tremendous.
Yes.
And I think the realization we had at that award ceremony is that we help make that happen because we're
And
not on the front line.
that's what you need in a
Yeah.
charity. You need some really good trustees that can actually get the thing going,
Yes.
because it's probably not the expertise of many of the councillors. So
And I think that's it, is, what we do doesn't seem particularly difficult. And I think maybe that's because it's a bit natural, maybe, to make sure things are run properly and the finances are good, and with fundraising and all of that. It's almost natural, I think. So we don't necessarily always realize that what we do has such a big impact. And I think, going back to what I said a few minutes ago, I think everybody should do something in their community, and it doesn't have to be something that's out of their kind of their remit.
yeah.
If you're if you're a bookkeeper, could you lend your help
Yes.
to a charity that might
Yeah.
need some help bookkeeping? Or if you're really good at building shelves, does a
Yeah.
charity out there need help putting some
Yes.
shelves up?
Yeah.
I think it's things like that. I think as a society, I think we've lost a little bit of that over the years.
The community bit, isn't it?
The
The
community bit,
doing things for
exactly.
other people.
Yeah,
But what I found fascinating is this, like you saying, "Oh, I do other bits and pieces," and so do I, and I know that
yeah,
you do. But it's just like today you brought a bunch of flowers, and I think that is really, it's a beautiful thing to do, and I've fortunately been experienced quite a lot of that recently.
mm,
And it's like, it's so important when you come home and you've had a difficult time of it, that actually that people are thinking about you.
Yes.
yeah,
And that's just because what you're going through is never going to go away, but they're thinking about you at that moment in
Yeah.
time.
yeah,
And that's just nice to be thought about, because people often don't know how else to
And actually, from my perspective, sometimes I don't know how much to bother people, shall I
mm,
say.
yeah,
If I know people are struggling and I know a farmer's struggling, I don't really want to put him under too much pressure, or her, by ringing up. So sometimes I'll just send a text or WhatsApp,
yeah,
send a picture or something, and say, "How are you doing?" And if they want to, they reply, and if they don't, they don't, and that's
yeah,
fine. And sometimes they say, "Could we have a chat?" Um, and it makes it much simpler and easier, and they're not under pressure, because that's the thing that I would worry about, is putting people already stressed and under pressure, under more pressure. Well, should I, so that's what I do.
I have somebody that I've been in contact with for some time. I met them about a year ago, and their journey's kind of paralleled a bit of mine at the moment. And it's been really nice having somebody who could understand, but also for both of us, not just for me, but for her as
Yes.
well. And just that, like you say, dropping a WhatsApp to
Yeah.
somebody, dropping a text, just making a recognition. And a person up the road, I can guarantee she's made contact with me every single week,
Yeah.
2 or 3 times a week,
Yeah.
just to say, "You okay?"
Yeah.
And I think that's really
Just checking
important.
you out.
Yeah, I think it's so important, because that's when people get lost.
Yes.
yeah. I completely agree with that. There was a really good example that I went through a couple of weeks ago. The community that I live in, we have a community building. It's got quite a bit of land around it. And some travellers had turned up onto this bit of land one afternoon, and the lady that runs the community building was in the building. Her car was in the car park where the travellers had turned up, and I don't particularly get on well with this lady. She's a bit difficult to work with, and I think she would agree with what I'm saying. Um, and we'd had a rather tense conversation a couple of weeks ago. I've not spoken to her since, but I spotted that her car was there and she was clearly in the building. And I took the couple of minutes to ring her and go, "Are you okay?
Yeah.
Do you need someone to come and move your car?"
Yeah.
And things like that, because actually that makes a difference to people's lives. And you don't want someone feeling
Yeah.
in a difficult position, especially when they're you know potentially feeling isolated when they
Yeah.
are against a group of people.
And
I
when
think it
the
made a
odds are against you, even you just need somebody behind your back,
Yeah.
and somebody that understands. And I think that's what we've gained with FCN, because all the volunteers have farming experience, so they've all been through different things that might help the other person.
yeah, exactly that.
It's understanding. It's putting yourself in their shoes, isn't it?
Well, it's
Yeah,
empathy, isn't it?
Yeah.
yes,
It's empathy at its best, really, and identifying. And you might not actually identify with the specific circumstances,
No.
but you can empathize with some of those feelings that
Yes.
go with it, hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I know one of my clients that I work with, she said to me, "You now know how I feel." And I said, "Yeah, I do know how you feel."
Yeah.
It doesn't make it any easier.
No,
But it
doesn't.
is that bit where
Yes.
actually sometimes it is nice for the other person to know that you do know exactly how they feel now.
And sometimes in that sort of relationship, it's nice to be honest with each other, isn't it? So that you can talk about things more easily.
Absolutely.
So going back to your award, were you going to say that?
No, I was going to ask something else, but you carry on.
No. I'm happy if you want to
No,
carry
no,
on
you
with the
carry
thread.
on.
So you got an MBE. Oh my gosh! No, you've blushed up now.
She has.
Why?
It seems so inappropriate, really. My grandson said, "Is it for Mum Best Ever?" And I thought that was far better. I was actually overwhelmed. I was stunned when I opened the letter. I looked at it. And then I go out and say to my husband, "Look what I've got. I don't know what to think about this." And he said, "Oh, I knew about that," because they'd had to ask him about it. But it actually had taken 3 years.
Wow.
Because my volunteers knew I was standing down as coordinator, and they thought it would be nice because I'd worked for so many years. And so they started putting it in operation. I still don't know the nitty gritty of it, but I know it was about 4 or 5 of them. And I know that Richard, who is a lecturer at Cannington College, that he was the one that did all the paperwork. But there's a huge amount of paperwork. And then you get a form. I got a letter and a form asking me if I wanted to be known as he, she, or they, or something. was I black, white, or anyway? But it is great.
Amazing.
Do you get I know you get, do you put that at the end of your name now?
Yes.
Suzie Wilkinson MBE.
Oh, and actually, I've had letters from people.
No.
Amazing.
But the first Sunday when I knew about it, I went, because I'm a bell ringer in Wedmore, and we were ringing for a special occasion, and they said, "You'll all have to sign your names." And they were all teasing me. I mean, everybody's teased me, saying, "Do they have to curtsy for me?" All this stuff. And so they said, "You'll have to write Suzie MBE." So I did, and I said, "That's the last time I write it," because it's unnecessary, isn't it, really?
Well, I suppose that feeling that you've actually been recognised by the nation, isn't it? That's the thing, isn't it? Because very often people don't get recognised for work that they've done over the years. Because it's not like this year's work. You're talking about 20 years worth of work here, aren't you? And that's the difference.
And that's what a lot of people have said, that they are so pleased it's going to a volunteer.
Yes.
Rather than a footballer or a celebrity or somebody that...
It's funny, actually, because we were talking a little bit about this with John Penrose around MBEs. And actually, he made a really good point, which is, of course, the media get a list of people that have been given the awards. And, of course, they only really promote the ones that everybody knows.
Yes.
You know, it is the celebrities and so on. Because I made the point of, it'd be great to see more volunteers and more people do things in their communities get these awards. And he did make the good point of, well, they do, perhaps not as many as they should. But the people that the media publicise, of course, are the footballers and so on. And I do question whether that's right still, because at the end of the day, they're kind of just doing their job. Okay, yes, they might be the very top of their game, top of their career. But is that right? I'm not sure. I definitely think more people in the community should get more of those awards.
So.
It's strange, really, because like you were saying about reading things, and when you guys went and picked up that award from Bath and West, and that's still not even gone into our local paper.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Yeah,
it's really sad.
I think the only way that I got any publicity was that I actually I told our publicity guy, national publicity guy, that I was getting this award, and so he made sure that it went into the papers. It wouldn't have got into the Western Daily Press without.
But how sad!
It is.
How sad is that? I mean, we get the Cheddar Valley Gazette every week. We've had it delivered every week for as long as I can remember, and I always buy it because I think it supports the local community. It's good to keep it going. I would hate to see it not be there. And then you open it up this morning and it's about the cricket, Okay, and on the back it's about the racing driver who's actually really not got a great deal to do with our area,
Right.
and it's you've got this, and it's like very little of it is actually about the local community, and I just think. Why are, like you're saying, why aren't you
Well,
celebrating the local
Yeah.
community and what
yeah.
is that? There's so many people doing such
Yeah.
fantastic work.
Again, it's
Yes.
about what sells papers,
Yeah.
and that
That's it.
sadly, that's what the issue
Yeah.
Should we
is.
set up our own community paper?
I
No,
think we've
I've
both got
thought
enough
about
going
it.
on.
Yeah, I know.
I do think the Mendip Times is good
Yes, it is. It's probably more.
because that's all community
Yes,
stuff.
it is more community
And
stuff.
nice
I agree.
paper.
Yeah,
Oh.
it feels nice. Yeah,
It does
it
feel
does.
good.
But
I've never felt a paper.
well, it's like a magazine.
Oh,
It's
okay.
got
It's
shiny,
glossy.
Oh, I
shiny
see.
We like the
paper.
glossy paper.
I
Yeah.
see. I must admit, I really like BurnhamOnSea.com. Mark, who runs that website, does a fantastic job of everything in the local community is on that website.
Yeah.
It's updated every day, and yeah, he does a fantastic job. And I wish that it was easy to set that up for other communities because it's such a great
But does he
news
do that on
source.
Instagram, or how does it work?
It's just go to BurnhamOnSea.com, and it's all on that website.
But I'm an Instagram user, as you know, only because I got kind of my hand
I think he
encouraged.
does post on Instagram.
I've never
I think.
seen them post.
It's definitely on Facebook. Definitely post on Facebook. But really, it's the website itself
Yeah.
that he posts on, and it's great. It's just a great way of seeing what's going on.
Yes.
I live in Weston Super Mare, and we have the Western Mercury,
Yeah.
which I believe is now owned by the Sun newspaper group or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of the newspapers locally have been bought by the Sun or equivalent. And you go on that website, and it's full of ads. Like it's quite hard to distinguish between what's a news article and what's an
What's an ad.
advert.
Yeah.
But it's not updated very often.
No.
You know, it could be 2 weeks before
Yeah.
a story appears
Yeah.
there. And you think, what is that
And
about?
the Western Mercury used to be amazing.
The newspaper used to be great.
I went
yeah.
to school with the editor's daughter, and we went round to the office and in the boulevard,
Yeah.
and there was all the
Yeah.
pictures outside and anything you wanted.
Yeah, that office is becoming the town council's office now. Yeah, because they've moved out of there.
So where's the Western Mercury?
I don't know if they've got an office anymore. I
That's
don't
sad.
know. It is. Yeah.
Well, we did have somebody on the podcast, didn't we? That was a
Western
journalist, and she
Daily
said
Press, I
they
think.
all work from home, don't
Yeah,
they?
I think so. Yeah, because they don't have offices
And
anymore.
that's not the same
No.
because it's all about getting together with people. isn't it?
Exactly. I was just about to say it's isolation again, then,
Yeah.
isn't it? So you only have that person's opinion. It's
Yes.
a bit like giving yourself all your own feedback and
Yeah.
not actually having anybody to say, do you know what, you need to buck your ideas up,
Yes.
or actually, be grateful for what you've got,
Yeah.
or actually that's really sad and I need to
Yeah.
support you need to
Yeah.
ask for support. It's all of those kind of things that
Mm,
if you are on your own all the time and you've only got your own company, that negative cycle can soon catch up on top of you.
That worries me about people working from home too
Yeah.
much, because I
No.
do think you need, and probably most of my work has been a lot of my work has been at home, but I've always got out to meet the farmers, and
Yeah.
mm.
and you can't you need to meet somebody once to think about how they talk, because then when you talk to them on the phone, you can sort of picture their face.
Yes, yeah, I agree with that. Actually, I'm
Yeah.
very similar. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't. Yeah, it's very difficult to really understand someone. I think
Yes.
until you meet them face to face.
And I can recognise voices quite well now because I've done it for such a long time. But I do like to have a picture of their face. And that sometimes shocks you because it's very different from what you
Yeah.
expected.
Yeah.
I don't ever do telephone counselling unless I absolutely have to. It's not, I don't, I mean, the charity does it, and some of the counsellors say they get on really well doing it, and some people don't want you to see
No.
their face, and that's okay. But it's not something like that.
No.
My supervisor for years used to say, Ange, why do you travel all this way to come and see me? You really don't. We can do it by phone. No, I do it face to face. I do it by phone now because she doesn't have an office. Her office used to be in Taunton, but she doesn't use it anymore. And I'd have to drive all the way down to Exmoor to see her, and I don't really want to do that journey. But other than that, I'd rather see somebody face to face.
It's much better every time.
It's about relationships,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And even if you can't do it every time, to do it most
Yeah.
times.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So we're near to the end because we've
Okey-doke.
probably dragged you through this for long enough. So how we normally end is ask people to kind of share something that they want to achieve in the next 12 months.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, this has been thrown on you. No prep.
Sorry, we do this with every guest.
I
We
think
say this to
it's-
every guest.
I think my stress is actually thinking about going up to London and to
Oh,
receive
gosh,
this
yeah.
award.
When is it?
I don't know.
I haven't told you yet.
No. But I've also got another award with the Royal Agricultural Societies, and I've got to go to the House of Lords for that.
Oh, wow.
It's just to give me a certificate,
Yeah.
which is lovely. But the thought of going to London, the thought of moving out of Somerset.
Oh, bless you.
So I've just got to think of things that I would like,
How are you going to get up there? By train?
probably. Yes.
And who's going with you?
Charlie.
Okay. Can you stay over
Yes, we will.
and go to the theatre?
Yes. We'll do something.
Make a
Yeah.
proper,
But
proper couple of days.
I will tell you what our ambition is as a family.
Go on
Oh,
then.
go on.
Arlyn Bay in North Cornwall, there is this amazing house on the edge of the cliff.
Mhm.
It's really beautiful. In the Sunday Times last week, we saw that it's come up for sale. So I sent the picture to my family, and it's £4 million. So,
We'll have two.
so we have decided as a family that we're all going to buy lottery tickets this weekend
Brilliant.
and see what we can get. We shall never get it, but it's just something as a family
Yeah,
to
yeah.
do.
That's
Yeah, that's
lovely.
nice.
So that's what we're
Lovely.
going to do.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's our ambition.
Bless you. I
Sounds
wish. I'll put
good.
fingers crossed, toes crossed.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been lovely
Thank you.
talking to you.
It's been
Yeah.
great.
No,
We'll
thank
hopefully
you.
have you to come. We'll get you to come back and tell us if you've won.
I will.
And also, if you know anybody else that'd like to come on, give us a shout.
Yeah.